See where we go now? There, boy.
Shiloh here. My name is Robert. I'm a member of the Wealden Cave and Mine Society, which is a charitable trust looking after things underground here. And welcome to Barron's Cave, the oldest of about a dozen underground systems around the centre of Reigate. What I'm going to do is first of all give you the health and safety warning that are required, with thanks to the legal profession. Then take you to the other end of the system, basically to get your eyes a bit dark adjusted, so that when I take you back, you'll be able to see things better. So first of all, with the health and safety warnings, there's 3 of them. First of all, essentially mind where you put your feet. There are quite a few stairs or steps. The floor is uneven. It's basically like walking around on a beach with loose sand. If you do have any trouble, give me a shout and I'll come back and see what we can do. The second warning is please don't touch the side walls. There's graffiti I'll be showing you that's more than 300 years old, and I'd like to be able to read it afterwards as well as before, and it is, just as I say, very easily eroded. The third warning, and the most important one, relates to wildlife. Now, does anybody dislike bats? And I don't mean to eat, or cricket bats. Don't worry, there shouldn't be any bats in here today. They might occasionally hibernate in here, which is why there's no access to this system during the winter months. But there shouldn't be any bats in here today. But there are dinosaurs, and they are quite hungry. And you think I'm joking. Okay, so if you follow me, we'll go up the stairs, take to the other end of the system, get your eyes dark adjusted, and I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the place. Follow me. That's all bright for you. It is, yeah. I've been down here all day. Don't worry. Don't worry, it's fine. Okay, so for those of you who have made it to the top of the steps and looked out, you probably know where we are, which is at the top of the castle grounds in Reigate. There's a nice grassy sward, which would be splendid to play croquet on or something if it wasn't for a dirty great stone pyramid poking out the middle of it. And that's what you're looking out of at the top. Now, the castle grounds is named after, of course, Reigate Castle, which is a traditional motte and bailey castle. So it was built shortly after the Norman invasion by William de Warrenne, one of William the Conqueror's right-hand men. And just a classic motte and bailey construction, a motte formed of piled up earth to form a mound, with a bailey, a less well-defended area around the motte. So the way you came in here this afternoon was along the dry moat on the southern and western side of the castle. On the north side, where the clay is closer to the surface, it could hold water, and that's why you have the fish ponds there today, and it would have been a wet moat times gone by. So that's Reigate Castle as it started. It would have later had a stone curtain wall built with towers. It was a fully fledged castle with everything that castles should have. But unfortunately they made it of Reigate stone, and Reigate stone doesn't survive very well outside. Partially it gets broken down by frost, but also of course the locals behave a little bit like they do now. They would have gone around and nicked the stone. So didn't survive very well. In fact, the last bits of the stone were used to build pyramid at the top, the first version of the pyramid, and also Barnes's Folly, the mock Gothic gateway that you probably know in the castle grounds, built in the 1770s. So that's where the stone is. I probably ought to say a little bit more about Reigate stone, because it is something that is very well known historically, which is how much of the main large buildings, grand buildings of central London used Reigate stone. So if you've ever been to Eltham Palace in southeast London, the Great Hall of Eltham Palace is built of Reigate stone. A lot of the interior of Hampton Court Palace has got Reigate stone in it. If you walk up the stairs to the Whispering Gallery in St Paul's Cathedral, you're walking on Reigate stone. If you look at Tower of London, buildings like that, and also Windsor Castle, they had Reigate stone in it. It was a very important building stone at the time, all coming from stone mines, stone quarries, underneath the North Downs here. Now, there's not much of this left to see, of course, but there are some stone mines underneath Merstham still with of order 9-10 miles of passage near the M25, M23 junction. So there still are quite a few of the old stone mines left. So why am I talking about the castle? Well, what we believe this passage is that you've just been walking up is in fact probably an old postern gate of the castle. So if you think of the castle, you had a barbican facing north, but that was a little bit of a pain to operate. I mean, if you were wanting to nip out on a Friday night for a swift half, you didn't really want to be lifting portcullises, drawbridges, and end up on the north side of town where there are no pubs. Far better to nip down postern gate, the back door to the castle, down out into the dry moat, would have been dry at the time, nip over into Red Cross Inn, which is of course a medieval inn. So that would have been its purpose. And you can see from the profile it is quite an old passage. There are written records dating back to William Camden's Britannia that there was something down here, and that's 1586. So quite an old piece of passageway in part of the castle. So what I'm going to do now, unless anyone has any questions, I'm going to dive down the stairs here, turn right into the first side passage, and with the eyes nicely dark adjusted, it'll be easier to see what there is to see.
So I'm not much of a geologist, but when you say Reigate stone, is it like a bit chalky, a bit, what's...
Yes, it is. It's a sort of kind of cross between sandstone and limestone.
Right.
There are various technical geological terms for it, but that's intuitively the best description. And you'll also hear talking about hearthstone as well, which also comes out from the same mines. Okay, head down the stairs. I'm going to inspect the dinosaur. You can inspect them out. Did any of you live in Reigate and have lived in here for more than 15 years or so? You do? Just. They're probably not old enough, I suspect, to allow you to get into the wine bar.
No.
There used to be a wine bar in Sandmine, which is called Bachelor's on the Rocks. It's roughly where Curry Couture, Sweet Potato is, that sort of area now. And this was a map that was kind of liberated when that was closed. And it had to close because actually it was underneath the A217 and there was a danger that a lorry driver might pay an inadvertent visit through the road surface. So it had to close. Just to get your sense of direction on it, you're looking down, north is off to the right, west is up. The A217 runs across the top here. There's then the castle grounds, sort of embankment around the edge here, the moat is here, and actually the bottle cave is underneath the entrance to Bounds Cave. This gives some idea of the fact that you've got multiple levels here. And in fact there is more than one level of this mine as well. And indeed, if I was to expand the map, you'd find going up you get to Nutley Lane, Nutley Hall Pub, where there's a system accessible from under by a stone spiral staircase behind the bar. Down in this direction there's the Red Cross Inn. You see how I navigate around Reigate, and there's a bit underneath there, and indeed there's a row of houses by the Red Cross Inn that fell in the 1860s, 1870s into the mine. Coming down, we get through, of course, Barron's Cave, Tunnel Road West, you may have been in today, it's open today, Tunnel Road East, whole series down Castle Street, ending at Reigate Lodge, where there's a rabbit warren accessible via 40-foot abseil for those of us who are inclined. And that sort of heads out sort of underneath the sort of sixth form college, that sort of area. So quite a lot of these systems, and they're all constructed in the early 19th century, that sort of time. And what they were after was not Rose's chocolates, but what's in here, which is Reigate silver sand. So if you dry what you're walking on out, you get very nice sand indeed. And it was used for glass making, it was used as a scouring agent like vim. It's used as a blotting agent, so you write with your quill pen, pour it on, blur it off. But it also would have been used on the floor, a bit like you use sawdust in butchers' shops or the better quality pub. And in fact, what you would have got in here is you would have got donkeys with panniers on the back. Small boys would have filled up the panniers with the sand. Donkey would have been walked round to the local pub, old sand swept out, new clean sand put down, at which point they'd be paid for their labour. And they'd be paid in ale, at which point they'd be happy as sand boys. That's the origin of the expression. And so if you read the old Curiosity Shop, Charles Dickens, Jolly Sand Boys is the name of the pub. As you can see, this passage you're standing in now is very different from the thing you were walking on. And in fact we know that this was a little sand mine. You can see it's built for width, it's not built for walking up and down. And this is actually an early 19th century little sand mine. Now of course, as everybody who's on the small side has identified, it is now a dinosaur lair. Let's go and meet T-Rex. With a T-Rex, do you put him out for the binman, or do you take him for a walk across Priory Park and put him in here, notwithstanding comments of the local constabulary? As some people have found, he does eat small people occasionally.
Bones.
Yeah.
Those little boys' bones.
Yeah. He hasn't let out a roar today. Quite within our rights to have him down here. This is the Folkestone beds of the lower Greensand, which is Cretaceous. We can have dinosaurs in here if we like. And we do actually get them in the stone mines underneath the North Downs, genuine fossils. Okay, if we go in the corner, I'll show you a bit more as to hoary old horse head carvings. So I think it's quite a bit older than that. There's about half a dozen horses' heads distributed around the system. All of them are facing from right to left. Part of that, no doubt, the artist was right-handed. Right-handed people do tend to do profiles that way. But there is something about horses' heads. They are very, very much done that way around. Beneath, you have some idea of how the system was lit in days gone by. Something spiked in here and burnt. You get this on all the corners of the system. Holes in the bottom and then scorch marks where something's been burnt. On the other side we have pretty much the only decent example in Baron's Cave of a candle holder slot. So where I'm shining my light, you'll see where there's a candle went in, soot marks above. That's the more usual form of lighting for the sand mines in here, early 19th century, and also some of the stone mines. Further down we have, so starting with Julius Caesar and heading across, they do look to me as if they're like copies off the backs of coins. Below we have Reigate's answer to Edward Monk's The Scream, or if you prefer, Collina, the Italian referee. And up above we have a nice piece of graffiti by Skinner, Brighton, 1783. So a name, a place and a date. The only place where that is in the cave. And it's kind of indicative actually of what was happening around that time in the Regency. Reigate was quite an important stopping off point on the London to Brighton Turnpike Road, and people used to stop off, have lunch, change their horses and come down Baron's Cave. In fact, we know the Prince Regent, the later King George IV, used to stop, have lunch at the White Hart Hotel, where Dartmouth Bank now is. And he, of course, was very frequent on the London to Brighton Road, going down to visit his pavilion and visit Mrs. Fitzherbert, the Georgian Monica Lewinsky. And he, of course, had a bit of a problem. He needed to get down to Brighton in a hurry. He wasn't allowed to travel far from central London. So rather remarkably, at the same time, all the turnpike trusts took it upon themselves to straighten the roads. And that's still visible if you look at the A217, which is the London to Brighton Turnpike route of the time. The A23 equivalent wasn't around at that time. It's a series of straight lines. If you go south down to Gatwick, it's straight lines. The original road wiggled around south of Sidlow Bridge. If you go north through Kingswood and Tapworth, it's straight lines as well. So we have evidence at the moment of the straightening of the roads. And of course the last hurrah of road straightening was the building of Tunnel Road in Reigate itself. 1823, 1824 makes it the oldest road tunnel in the UK. So when I'm walking through it now, I think of a desperate man trying to get down to Brighton. Okay, what we're going to do now is head down, turn right and down the cave itself, and as you can see, a very different character to anything else you've been walking around. Nice smooth roof with what the estate agents call a dado rail or a picture rail on either side. An unusual feature for a cave. You may wonder how they reached the roof. Did they bring down scaffolding, step ladders? Of course not. A cave, you can cheat. You start with a roof and then you dig out beneath your feet. No problem. We're not sure entirely when it was dug, but we know that William Camden in his Britannia 1586 referred to a great cavern hewn out of the soft stone from which the hills derived. So we know it was around at that time. And indeed there's graffiti on here going back to 1644. So we know it is quite an old piece of construction. And indeed it's the graffiti as you look round that sort of catches the eye. So if you look just behind you, you'll see here a nice little adjunct of two things. First of all, a date in the 1770s above the light, and then below we have "Why Front Prevents Fallout" circa 1980. Looking quite nostalgic now, I think, but you can see how fresh it is even though it must be 20 years old. The whitening, by the way, is salt leaching in here. Basically you get salt coming through with the water, it evaporates and leaves salt remains. Some other cave systems around here you do get lime washing when they were used for mushroom growing, but that's not true here. 1644 puts it around the time of the English Civil War. Reigate Castle did actually withstand a little bit of a siege in the Civil War, but I don't know the circumstances when people were putting graffiti on the end wall like that. You can see, incidentally, despite the care in which most of this passageway has been built, they really did give up when they came to the end. So when you look in that corner, you can see they really didn't finish it. If you look at the roof, you can see it went from being smooth, symmetrical, to being very rough around here. And indeed, the picture rail sort of runs out, round about there on that side, and similarly on the other side. So whatever it was, they sort of kind of gave up before they finished it. My guess is that what this was actually used for was simply as storage for the castle above. And the reason why they gave up was because they realised they were getting into dodgy ground here. The stone probably isn't as good above us as it is further back. They therefore were heading down. This is down dip a bit. But this end floods, so they probably realised they were hitting the water table. About 4 or 5 years ago, this flooded up to about knee height at this end. However, nothing as prosaic as storage was the old reason why it was said that this was built. People said that this was where the barons met in order to plot against King John, get him to sign the Magna Carta. So that's what gives it the name, but it is actually totally false as a story. The Earl of Surrey, whose castle this was an ally of the king and wouldn't have allowed any plotting here. King John, we did know, and simply stayed in Reigate Castle. What I'll do now is head back a little and I'll show you another horse's head. G king was. Naturally, she knew about Broughton as well. So some of these carvings still have local resonance. Roof here, this bit of mounting, there was electricity put in here at one point, probably during the war when this was used as an air raid shelter.
This way, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, I got lost, you know.
Amazing, isn't it? But the thing is,